Welcome to Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece. My name is MyLinda Butterworth, and today we finish the tale of the Argonauts with the chapter Jason's End. Jason did not succeed to the throne of Iolcus, for whose sake he had gone on this dangerous quest, taken Medea as his wife from her father, and wickedly murdered her brother Absyrtus. He had to leave the realm of Acastus, the son of Peleus, and flee to Corinth with his young wife. Here he lived with her for 10 years, and she bore him 3 sons. The 2 eldest were twins, and their names were Thessalus and Alcimes. The third, Tysander, was much younger. During these years, Jason had loved and honored Medea, not only for her beauty and her wits, but also for her resourceful mind. But later, the time lessened the charms of her person. He fell deeply in love with a beautiful young girl named Glauce, the daughter of Creon, the king of the Corinth. He wooed her without his wife's knowledge, and only after her father had agreed to their union and appointed a day for the wedding did Jason tell Medea and urge her to consent to dissolve their marriage. Not that he had wearied of her, he protested, but it would be for the advantage of their children if he were kin to the ruling house. Now, Medea received his demand with bitter resentment and angrily called the gods to testify to the oaths he had sworn her. But Jason ignored her fury and insisted on wedding the king's daughter. In despair, Medea wandered through her husband's palace. "Woe is me," she cried. "Would that a flash from heaven would strike me down. Why should I live any longer? If only death would take pity on me. Oh, father! Oh, country I left in disgrace! Oh, my brother that I murdered, and whose blood is now coming upon me! But it was not Jason, my husband, who should have punished me. But it was for him that I sinned. O goddess of justice, I call upon you to destroy him and his young concubine." Creon, Jason's father-in-law, came upon her in the palace as she raged through the room and court. "You and your scowling eyes," he said, "you who are smoldering with fury at your husband, take your sons by the hand and leave my country this very instant. I shall not return home until I have driven you from my borders." Medea suppressed her anger and answered him composedly. "Why fear evil from me, Creon? You have done me no wrong. You owe me nothing. You gave your daughter to a man who met with your approval. How did I concern you? I hate only my husband, who owed me everything. But what is done is done. Let them live together as man and wife. Let me continue to dwell in your country. For thought that I have been greatly wronged, I shall be silent and submit to these mightier than I." But Creon saw the rage in her eyes and did not trust her. Even when she clasped his knees and implored her in the name of his own daughter Glauce, he hated the rival. "Go," he said, "and free me of care." But when she begged him to put off the exile for one short day so that she might find refuge for her sons, he replied, "I am not harsh of spirit. Many times I have foolishly yielded, beguiled by misplaced pity. Now, too, I feel that I am not acting wisely. Nonetheless, have your way in this." As soon as Medea had gained the respite she desired, madness came over her, and she prepared to carry out a deed she had vaguely planned, yet never really considered doing. First, however, she made one last attempt to convince her husband of his disloyalty and injustice. You have betrayed me, she cried. You took another wife, notwithstanding the fact that I have given you sons. If you were childless, I would forgive you. You would have an excuse. As it is, you have none at all. Do you think the gods who ruled the world when you swore faith to me are no more, or that men are living by some new laws that you dare break your word? Tell me. I shall ask you as though you were my friend. Where do you advise me to go? Will you send me back to my father, whom I deceived, whose son I killed for love of you? Or what refuge would you suggest for me? It will indeed add glory to the new wed pair if your first wife and your own sons roam through the world as beggars. But Jason was deaf to her reproaches. He promised to supply her and the children with gold and send messages to friends who might offer her hospitality. But she rejected such help. Go marry, she said. You will celebrate a bridal which will end in sorrow. When Jason had left her, he regretted these last words, not because her purpose had changed, but because she feared he might keep watch on her and prevent her from putting her evil plan into execution. And so she sent for him again, put on a more gentle manner, and chose wistful words. Jason, forgive me for what I have said. I was blinded with rage. Now I see very well that all you have done is for the best. We came here as poor refuge, but this new marriage of yours, you expect to provide for yourself and for your children, and even for me. When they have been away for you for a while, you will recall your sons and let them share in the fortune of their sisters and brothers. Come, my children, cast out your bitterness against your father, just as I have cast out mine. Jason really believed that she had put away her grudge that she had borne him. He rejoiced at this and made many promises to her and the children. And Medea set out with him still more certain of good faith. She begged him to keep the children and let her go alone. To gain consent for this from Glauce and her father, she had precious robes of gold fetched from her stores, and gave them to Jason for the king's daughter. At first, he hesitated, but finally she convinced him, and he had a servant take the gifts to the bride. But those beautiful robes, they were made of stuffs which had been drenched with poison. When Medea had bidden her husband a falsely sweet farewell, she waited from hour to hour for the messenger who was to report to her how the presents had been received. At last he came and called from afar, "Board your ship, Medea, and flee. Your foe and your father are both dead." When your sons entered the palace at their father's side, we servants rejoiced that the feud was healed. The young princess received her husband with smiling lips, but when she saw the children, she veiled her eyes and turned away her face as if she loathed their presence. Jason tried to placate her, spoke kindly words in their behalf, and spread out the gifts before her. The sight of the magnificent robes gladdened her heart. She softened and promised the bridegroom to agree to everything he wished. When your husbands and sons have left her, she reached eagerly for the marvelous raiment, cast the golden mantle about her shoulders, twined with gold wreath in her hair, and joyfully looked at her image in the mirror. Then she trailed through her apartments, childishly proud of her new apparel. But soon her feelings changed. She paled, her limbs shook, her feet faltered, and before she could reach a seat, she fell. The color ebbed from her face. She turned up her eyes so that only the whites showed, and foam gathered on her lips. The palace rang with cries. Some of the servants hurried to her father, others to her husband. In the meantime, the magic wreath on her head had burst into flames. Poison and fire contended for her flesh, and when her father rushed into her with a loud lament, he found only the dead, disfigured body of his daughter. In despair, he threw himself upon her, and the poison in the murderous robe worked on him also, so that he, too, lost his life. I know nothing of Jason. Instead of cooling Medea's rage, the recital of these horrors only served to fan it hotter than ever. Like an avenging fury, she ran out to deal the fatal blow to her husband and herself. Night had fallen, and she hurried to the room where her sons lay asleep. "Steel yourself, my heart," she muttered on the way. "Why do you shudder from doing this awful thing, the needful deed? Forget that these are your children, that you have borne them. Forget you are doing them a welcome service. If you do not kill them, they will die at the hands of their foes." When Jason hastened towards his house to find the murders of his young bride and take vengeance on her, he heard the screams of his children. Running through the open door of their chamber, he found them bleeding from deadly wounds, slain like victims at the altar. Medea was nowhere to be seen. When he left his house, he heard a rushing sound overhead. Looking up, he beheld her and a dragon-drawn chariot, which her magic art had conjured, riding the wind away from the scene of her revenge. Jason had no hope of punishing her for her crime. Despair engulfed him. His soul remembered the murder of Absyrtus. He rushed upon his sword and died on the threshold of his own house. And here ends our tale of the Argonauts. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends, enjoy the journey.